Hey, Jimbo, you ready for this deal?
Live action.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum and the Buck and Flamingo Turquoise Shop, both located right here in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. Hey, it's old Cody over here, and as always, I have my main man with me, Mr. Rodeo Historian himself. He's been making all kinds of contributions to books, writing forwards for people, making sure it's historically accurate, writing songs. He's just been doing it all.
Need to do something.
Jimbo Sniley. Good morning, Jimbo. Good to see you. What the heck do we got going on today?
Good morning, Cody boy. It's a great day in Osage, man. And what about that Buck and Flamingo? That's the place, isn't it?
It's a great place. If you need it, if you're in the doghouse, come over there. We'll get you out of the doghouse. If you need a birthday, Christmas, anniversary, or just because present, come see us. We got the largest selection of turquoise in the state of Oklahoma now.
Great place. Cody, we've got Neil Worrell with us today. And Neil's a 5 times steer roping finalist. He won the average in 1990. He's won Pendleton, all over the country. Placed or won it, about all of them. And he's the son of Sonny Worrell, who's a 7 times NFR calf roper, 9 times NFR steer roper.
One of the best.
One of the best. And he's the grandson of the great Everett Shaw, a 6 times world champion, just an iconic figure in the world of rodeo.
Great nephew to Dick Truitt, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, they're just cowboys all over his
That's
pedigree.
a long list right there.
Right.
Holy moly.
Right. But anyway, he's going to have a lot of stories to share with us today, and we're going to talk about his grandpa, I know a lot, and his dad, and what he did all over the country. So, Neil, welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Neil, for those that don't know, where'd you grow up at?
Grew up in Altoona, Kansas. Dad, I was born in Ada, Oklahoma, and Mom and Dad had a place in Fredonia till about I was 2. Moved out there to Altoona then and lived there ever since.
When I was a kid, they always introduced your dad, Sonny Worrell, Altoona, Kansas.
Where is Altoona at for everybody that
don't know.
never even heard of it? I don't even know if it's on a map.
Highway 75 and 47 Junction would be the quickest way to say it, but it's approximately 45 miles or 48 miles from north of Coffeyville, 45 miles north of Independence, Kansas. Okay. Approximately 95 miles east of Wichita, Kansas.
Real close to Fredonia, if anybody knows where Fredonia is. You want to hear a little crazy fact about Fredonia, Jimbo?
Yep.
I was born in Fredonia, Kansas.
Boy, do they have a sign out?
Not yet.
Well,
not yet.
They will have. Well, did you travel with your dad a lot when he was rodeoing, I guess?
Not a lot. I went a few times. But
where all did you go with him?
Most of it I don't remember.
Yeah.
I was little enough that I don't remember all of them. I remember the one horse we took was a calf horse called Ben. And I made one trip with him, and we was over there around Camden, Missouri, and was driving down the road, and the guy had a convertible. They rolled the convertible down, and Dad said, "Get up here and wave at the girls." And I said, I was scared to death at the time.
You know, a lot of people don't remember you, but your dad was a really good calf roper. You know.
He made 5 of the first 6 NFRs in the calf roping.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't know he come real close one year of winning the world. 1 year right behind Dean Oliver.
Yep.
And 1 year he was tying every time he tied a calf, his hand was bleeding. He had 2 broken fingers, one on each hand, and blisters and everything else. And back then, that was the way you made a living.
Right.
And he didn't know no different. Just grit the pain and go on.
He bulldogged too some, didn't he?
Tommy Combs Benny Combs used to say, come up and ask Mom, and she said, he asked her, is Sonny in the bulldog? And he said, no. He said, well, sorry to hear that, but that's great for us. She said, why is that? He said, gives us a better chance to win some money. And he kept track of Dad 1 year, the year before the finals, before they had the first NFR. Dad would have made the NFR in the bulldog.
In 58, the year before?
The year before.
What all NFRs did he compete at? Where were they? I assume one was in Dallas and probably one was in Los Angeles. Where?
Yeah, I don't remember all of them.
Is that where they all were in those
Dallas,
years, Jimbo?
And then Los Angeles, and then in '65 they went to Oklahoma City.
Okay.
So he would have competed in all 3 of those.
Well, I know the calves back then it was a lot bigger than they are now.
Did he leg a lot of calves or flank most of them, or do you remember?
He legged a lot of calves. Yeah. He flanked a lot of calves, but he was a lot faster legging calves than he was flanking calves.
Right.
And there's a lot of one match rope and one Easter. He legged 9 out of the 10, and he was winning the match till he tried to flank one calf. He lost the match because he tried to flank one calf.
Wow.
He was a big old boy too, wasn't he?
No,
he wasn't very big. About your size then.
He bulldogged steers. A lot of the bulldogging steers he would crawl off weighing 7, 8, maybe 900 pounds. He might not even touch the ground. He would he weighed 5'9". He stood 5'10", 5'11", 170 pounds.
Just an average guy.
Just an average guy. But he was so fundamentally sound that he just worked the heads, bring them around, slip a full Nelson, push off the fence, they'd fall down. And that's how he'd win something. First bulldog in here, when your dad was started, Grandpa roped a little bit, but Grandpa was more of Grandpa Worrell, Carl Worrell, was more of kind of a mule skinner, horse trader. And started cattle, bought cattle for Swift and Henry. He seen Choate and he said, I got this boy that thinks he wants to rodeo. Choate said, well, I guess send him down. We'll see how much he wants to rodeo. So Dad went down there. They would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go feed the horses, milk the cows, come back in, eat breakfast, usually a bowl of oatmeal, go back, head and tail them 3 and 4 year old colts. They'd have them all saddled and take off and send them around the section for about 3 or 4 hours. And then they'd go to roping on them. They bring the cows in, sort the calves off the cows, and that's what they roped off them 3 and 4 year old colts. So Dad learned how to ride a colt in there close enough, rope the calf, get his slack in there, and set that calf and that horse in the ground, and be there before that calf got up off the ground. That's where he learned how to get there quickly. And then Choate had 6 old bulldogging steers. Dad said if you didn't do it right, they walked all over you.
Any of them old roping steers, especially them old biggins, they get pretty wise.
Well, Choate kept these old things around for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And they was big.
Your dad went to OSU on a rodeo scholarship, didn't he? Or he was on the rodeo team?
He was on the rodeo team, and he didn't have a scholarship. Dad originally went down there and walked on the football team as a walk-on.
Okay.
And they'd kind of made fun of him, so he left. But originally, Dad went down there and tried to play football.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
You know, C.R. Boucher's grandson, he was a walk-on basketball player, OSU. Played, I think, the whole time.
I'll be honest.
At least 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where he met your mom at Stillwater?
No, he actually met Mom at Cheyenne. And Dad was up there with another gentleman, and Mom was fixing to go. It had rained at Cheyenne. The guy said, and I can't remember his name, and I can see his face and everything right now. But he told Daddy, he said, "You gonna let that young lady walk across there? You ought to pick her up and carry her across there." And it happened to be Mom.
Who was your mom's dad?
Everett Shaw.
The great Everett Shaw.
What was it like growing up to be the grandson of Everett Shaw?
Papaw was, I call him Papaw. We went and roped. He wanted to set things up when we roped. He didn't care about roping quick. He didn't want you to miss. He wanted you to be able to run 100 steers and rope 100 steers. He didn't care whether it's 2 swings out of the box or all the way to the back end of a 400-foot pin. He didn't want you to miss. So it's one of them deals, seeking perfection. And mastered how to tie, to string a steer, to tie a steer. He worked at it. And all the work you can put in it, you would reap benefits later. To be a champion, you had to work at it. He had a roping dummy out front there, had a calf head on one side, steer head on the other end. And I remember going out there with him and roping that thing for 100 times. He wouldn't miss. And I was about 6 or 7 trying to rope. Yeah, I'd missed quite a bit at the time. But he just said, rope it 100 times. You miss it? He said, I don't care if it's 99. You miss it, you start all over again. And patient man, didn't work, a lot of things didn't seem real fast, but he was steady. Everything had his own speed. Everything was smooth and steady. Accomplished a lot of things. And I remember one trip, Randy Moore had flew up there and got Papaw so he'd go with him to look at some horses. And Papaw was there looking at these horses at this ranch. He was talking to this guy's trainer about bits. And I asked Papaw later on, I said, Papaw, you know all this? He said, yeah, I do. But he said, that one bit there, the way that guy uses that one bit, might make that one horse in my barn a winner. He said, always listen. Might be one little thing to make one horse a winner.
He was a master horse trainer. What did you learn from him about your horses and stuff?
Patience. I would look, a lot of the young horses are outlaws that I'd buy. I'd find a hole. Okay, most horses got a weak spot somewhere. Okay, find that hole. Once I found that hole, all right, now, where's that hole at? now what can I cowboy around and make that horse look like he don't have a hole? Make him a better horse. How can I help him be a better horse? And use his speed to make him stronger. And always have a good wool in my drags. And that let me tie lots of cattle that way. That little extra speed in the drag.
How'd you get your horses listening to you, Neil?
A lot of time, a lot of patience.
For when you say whoa, they stop.
I'd be riding the pasture, I'd say, whoa. Or I'd be coming to the gate, say, whoa. And make them stop and stand there. Some guys will stop and stand there a little bit and they'll ride straight forward. No. I'd stop and stand there. Might be 5 minutes, might be 5 seconds. Then I'd turn them around. Turn them 90 degrees or 180 or 360 degrees. Go a different direction from where I was headed. Might go 10 feet and then go back the same way I was headed. And then,
along with whoa, did you use a lot of voice commands like a smooch to make them go, or you wanted them to keep going?
I was always hustling the horses. That's something Dad had me done. That's something Shote had Dad done. When Dad was riding them colts, rode every colt the same. How he was making them colts hunt a certain spot, shall we say a hole, run into a certain hole behind that cow to rope a calf or rope a steer, making him hustle to that spot every time. So I was making every horse. I don't care if he could outrun a man of war or he couldn't outrun a turtle. Trying to get every ounce of run I could. And then when I left there with the Truitt, get every ounce of run I could out of him to make him stronger. And it worked for me. And then the good horses I had, all of them had good wool. Papa told me, always log a horse with 2 lines. That way, if something happens, he turns, he quarters one way or the other, you got 2 lines to straighten him up. So everything, you want him perfect every time. Consistency. That way is when he's consistent in the practice pen, he'll be consistent at the arena.
How long did it take you to get a horse going before you could haul him?
Depends on the horse. You take some horses that really ranch broke, finish handling. Some of them, 3 weeks, I can be going down the road with them. And some of them others, it might take a year. I've got one right now. I ain't got him finished yet, and I've had him 6, 7 years. I haven't been able to get him finished yet.
You said your grandpa had a roping dummy with a calf head on one end and a steer head on the other. And you'd would you rope each one of them 100 times, I guess?
Yes.
In a row? So for everybody out there listening, what would you do different on your loop to rope a good set of slick horns or a good slick neck? Because a lot of guys, they might not know what to do. It's not the same loop, is it?
Papa would have rope a flat loop. Papa's calf head is not like most plastic heads you buy. A calf head you stick in a bale of hay, where you can kind of rope it from a sidearm view or a sidearm throw. Papa had a piece of wood going back there. This would stick out a foot or a foot and a half on either side, kind of like ears. And he wanted you to rope that calf coming straight down. Perfection. He was a master way to handle that loop. And so you had to have that rope dipped and you had to throw it a certain way.
Would you shorten your spoke up for a neck loop or lengthen your spoke out for a horn loop?
No.
or would you just keep the same?
And we called it a bill back then, didn't they? Those old timers. I'd never heard of spoke till just the last few years.
Oh, okay.
Those old timers call it bill on your rope.
And
The spoke was called a bill?
Yeah, the bill, like a bill on your cap.
Oh, holy, I've never even heard that, Jimbo.
I bet Neil has.
yeah, but the tip of that loop, you throw a flat loop. You want that loop to hit for horns. You want to hit flat. And Papo would have that loop flat, so it rope both horns at the same time. A lot of team ropers nowadays and a lot of the guys tripping steers nowadays rope right to left. Papo wanted to rope both horns at the same time. That calf loop, he'd bring that loop tip down in front of that horse's head, and then when he comes down, it went down. It's like you throw it, like a yo-yo. You'd roll a yo-yo straight down and bring it right straight back up. He'd go right out here and bring it right back. So he'd have it right there. And I couldn't do it. I could do it a few times, but 100 times in a row, I could not do it. I worked at it, but I couldn't do it that way. Now, I could modify it a little bit and bring it not pure straight down, say a little 3/4, I could get it done. But
Cody, I've got a picture of that roping dummy with Toots Mansfield, Jim, Everett Shaw, and Royce Seawalt sitting on it.
Yeah, I've seen that picture. That is a good picture,
I know.
Jimbo. Holy
I know.
moly. You're going to have to post that now that you're telling everybody
Well,
about it
yeah, I might have to.
on the Cowboys of the
But
Osage.
I heard a story, too, one time that somebody came wanting to bet Shaw that he couldn't rope those big old white horns 100 times in a row. And he paid him after like 20 times. He could tell that he wasn't going to miss. He just went ahead and paid him.
No, that was bad bet.
Yeah.
Me tying steers, I've had a lot of guys say, how can you string one that string a steer coming that fast to you? And I was 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old, and was at Terry McGinley's place in Ogallala. And somebody said that, Papo said, I can do it 35 miles an hour. I won't hang on to the string, but I can string him coming 35 miles an hour at me. Had a steer strapped to a sled. He hopped off that deal, and Papo had 2 strings. And people got to realize, most cowboys nowadays, they just carry 1 string over here, and they grab a right-hand string, or they think they grab a left-hand string. It depends on what side Papo would be on. And for a right-hand string, he would take his left hand, reach across here, and grab his right-hand string, stick his hand through there, and grab that foot. And that way you'd have a perfect 90 degrees when you draw the slack. So he wouldn't never go up or never come down. He was in the center of that cannonball. He did it 3 times in a row and never missed a lick.
Stepped off the back of a pickup going 35 miles an hour, steers on the sled, coming at him.
Yes.
Never
Yes.
missed a lick.
Never missed a lick.
That was always one of my biggest deals. Cost me a whole bunch of money. Misstringing them feet coming at you.
Yeah.
Reaching down there to string him, coming up with nothing.
But
Guy Allen could do it and still win the round somehow.
yeah, but I don't think, Cody, you and I, both of our legs are not as long as Guy Allen's. Yeah, he's got a little. Our arms not as near as long as his either.
Nope. All that put together, though, he was a force to be reckoned with, no doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
Do you still have a lot of the trophy saddles and stuff that your grandpa won?
I have the. I do not have the last one. he gave me the last one, the 62 saddle. And Dad was using it on Clabber, a buckskin horse that come off the Scott Ranch in Montana. Broke the tree on him. When they put a new tree in it, it never fit a horse right. So we sent it with Papaw, and he'd come by, and he had the 34 or 36 Madison Square Garden saddle that Dad and Mom been trying to get for years. And because that saddle did not fit a horse anymore, always soared everything we had up. So we sent it with him to the Hall of Fame in Colorado Springs. And then somehow or another it got misplaced. But anyway, Babe got it back, and then little sister had it. And I don't know what happened to it after that.
Yeah.
You said he won the Madison Square Garden in 30-something?
When the calf opened, either in 34 or 36, and went all around the other time.
And then almost 30 years later, he won the World Championship in 62?
Yeah.
Is he the oldest world champion?
No.
Nope.
Ike Rude.
Ike Rude. Boy, him and Ike Rude, they were...
They battled.
They battled, weren't they? They were like Holyfield and Tyson, or...
No, they were close friends.
Well, they may have been friends, but I know that we have some posters. We've seen some from when Ike lived here in Pawhuska, and they had 4 big matches.
Oh, yeah.
Great big ones. They billed it like it was a heavyweight championship fight when those two went to match.
Yeah, I remember as a kid watching Ike Rude the last time he went Cheyenne, or the last time he roped at Cheyenne. Now, I can't say he won it, but I know he roped there. And I know he was riding a horse, probably stood 16-1. And there was a guy had a step ladder, a little old 3-step step ladder. Ike roped the steer and went out there, let his horse turn his horse around. The guy rode out there with the step ladder so Ike could get back on his horse.
He was pretty short. He was just 5'6", I think.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't very big.
Did you ever get to watch him rope much besides that run at Cheyenne?
Yeah, went to his place and roped one at one time.
What was it like roping with Ike Rude in his practice pen?
I was young. I was too young to tell you to remember a lot of it. That's the problem I have trying to remember a lot of things with Papo. When he took me to a lot of places, a lot of different places, but I was still young enough, preteen. I don't remember a lot of it. And it's just like a lot of us, our granddads or our dads taught us years ago, and later on in life, you wished you'd listened more or paid attention.
Or asked more questions or whatever, you know.
And I didn't.
I'm the same way.
Well, we took it for granted. It's just part of our life. Same thing with my grandpa, Wish I'd have talked more about it. Things.
There's a lot of things, Paul Pete. Oh, there's a lot of things. Paul Pete and I had some little discussions on what made a good tripping horse. And we didn't have heated arguments. We had little discussions on them.
Yeah.
But I respect his knowledge.
Yes, sir.
I learned a lot from him. But I had my own, what I was taught, I had my own way too.
Yes, sir.
But we had some little discussions, and we all thought we had it the right way. It worked for him, and I can't deny that. But my way was working for me at the time, so I can't deny that.
You kind of kept an old school way about the way you trip steers there for a while, kind of like your dad and granddad, but added a little bit of a modern twist to it. Was tying a lot faster steers than they ever tied. But you kind of went at it, it seemed like, a lot like they used to.
Well,
That's the way you learned.
that's the way I learned. And
Because you would get some major speed coming out of that hole.
I would get some major speed coming out of the hole, but the cattle I was drawing was a lot of times not as good as everybody else.
You can get on the bad end of them. But, hey, you were still tying them down.
I would get on the bad end. You got a third of good ones, a third in the middle, and a third on that back end. I would draw. I figure if you draw me the middle, write me a check. If you draw me on the back end, I'm going to tie him down. I'm going to try to knock that last hole or two out. And at the time, and that's where my biggest problem was that I beat myself. If you wanted to beat me real easy, draw me the pup.
That's just the way it goes sometimes.
I get frustrated. I just couldn't back off. I couldn't slow down to be fast. Something Sonny Davis told me one time at McAllister. And I told him, after my first run, he said, slow down. And I said, son, I got to speed up. Dad tells me to hurry. Hustle. He said, yeah, that's your problem with your dad, too. You don't slow down to be fast.
Sonny Davis never slowed down too much that I remember either.
Oh, no, but he was standing right there. He said, slow down to be fast. He said, tying is like grinding coffee. Some days it's real fast, some days it's real slow. I come back on my next steer. I drawed at Cheyenne. And sure enough, I strung him, went to cross him, pulls the top leg. I just crossed him, tie the bottom leg, pull the top one down, put a wrap around it, put my hoodie on, throw my hands in there. I'm 12-1. This is when Sean Burchett was still alive. Sean comes in there and makes a run and looks really fast. He's 12-2. I win the round by a tenth of a second. Sonny looked at me and said, see, slow down to be fast.
Well, that Sean Burchett, he was a speedster, wasn't he? He changed the game, I feel like, between him and maybe Roy Cooper and a few others in the steer open.
It was Sean, Jim Davis on Wendy battling at the time. It wasn't, Cooper was coming in after them two was battling. And Sean coming across there being so fast. And then Guy having to step his game up a little bit.
Sean seemed like he might have been one of the very first ones that I remember that strung the top leg on a steer rope and steer on the majority of his runs.
He did. He was. He said he just sticks up there handy. But in reality, a lot of guys do not realize that's how come a lot of steers strain or kick on you. Steer, you move that calf. It's like tying calves. The calf ropers don't realize that too. You pick a calf's legs up too far, or you'll throw them. That's not natural. So he's going to strain. You cross him low, he don't move. You string a top leg, you cross them low, they don't move.
It's just harder to do on the top leg.
It's just harder to do.
And with these littler cattle and stuff that they're roping now, it would be trouble to string that bottom leg sometimes with that thing up underneath them. No?
It's not. I worked on it. Dad's horse, the horse Dad win 178, they had the split title, the season title, and the average winner was called the world title champion. Well, Dad won it in 78 on a horse he called Buzz. And Buzz is always, when I was tying steers on him, I'd holler whoa, and he's always 1 step to 3 steps by me. And I'm always missing that leg. So I strapping the steers to a sled, and I spent hours dragging that sled behind the feed truck and in the grass. Not to make it easy, to make it difficult. Mud conditions, wet conditions. It didn't matter. I was holler whoa, and Mom would stop then, or she'd count to 3. So I made everything different every time. And it got to where it was easy. And leg be standing right there. I knew how to block step across and block the legs. I knew where the legs was, even when the water was in, my eyes were closed. And it just made it easy. I worked at it to make it easy. That's how come I got to where I could do it all the time.
You won the finals in 1990. What was that like? Was that at Guthrie?
That was a Guthrie. The first 5 head come Saturday morning. I get up, take a shower, fix and go feed my horse. I'm shaving. Sit up there and I looked in the mirror, and I'm black and blue from my chest all the way down to my knees. I've been kicked all night long. I know one steer I tied like a calf the 4th round or 3rd or 4th round. And I come back to Dad and I said, Dad, I said, that's the only way I could figure, just get to him, get a hold of him. And I got a hold of him. He kind of relaxed, so I just tied him like a calf. He said if you'd have stepped across to him, he'd got up. That next night, he got up on Kip twice. I come back. Yeah, T was riding Dutch. Steer got up on T. And T had some problems. I wound up beating him a 1/10 of a second.
That's pretty close.
That's pretty close. The last year in 95, I had a steer the guy tied in 35. Had to hit him twice, the back end of got at Lazy E. I roped him at the back end. He jumped right, and I knew I didn't have enough trip, so I went up there and turned him around, figuring he was going to circle back around to the outgate, where I'd have a lay at him. No, he went right straight back up the wall. I had to outrun him up the wall. So I left down there, and Clem was announcing.
Were you against the wall outrunning him?
Yes.
Or was he on the other side?
No, I'm against the wall, outrunning.
That's a big old cement wall, too, Jimbo. You're riding in between.
And I don't know how I kept from kicking any kind of cameraman or running over a cameraman. I don't know how I did that. All I know is I finally got by him right down there, and right where Clem could look right over the announcer stand and watch me tie him. So I went, Clem said, we went to state of Kansas and back. Guy was 35 on him the night before, and I was 30 on him and used a whole pin twice. And that horse was just a gasping for air. I was the last gunner the next round. And I run one to the Justin Healer sign. I was 15 on him. And I was the last man that time. So every time I stopped kicking, the horse would stop. And I come back and roped the 10 steer on him. I thought, best I could do. And I went second that year. But that's the year Arnold Phelps, Snowman. You couldn't beat him. Mm-hmm. Arnold drawed the cattle and he roped good. Horse worked good. He went 6 rounds. Got to give the man the credit. He outdrawed me, he outroped me that year.
I remember that year. He won all them go rounds.
Yeah.
Barely beat Neil out on that average. That was some roping right there, Jimbo, because Arnold did legitimately spank everybody in those rounds that year. Holy moly.
Oh, yes.
He was on a roll. His horse was working better than any other horse out there. He was drawing pretty good, but even just using them when he drew them, you know. So
That's the thing.
there were some good years right there, some good roping.
When you draw them, you've got to use them.
One of those years, they broke the arena record twice on 10, and they're roping some pretty big black steers. Roy Cooper, Todd Casebolt came and broke the arena record on 10, and then Roy Cooper right behind him on a big, nasty black steer came and beat him on the arena record on 10. It wasn't that year, but it was in that era right there, right real close, within a year or two of that. But they were roping some tough cattle then too, Jimbo, some pretty tough cattle compared to now. They were still pretty big. They were still using, you know, the plaster Paris instead of the pretty big cattle. I've watched some of those old videos.
But the cattle, even the cattle then, still were smaller than the cattle 15 years earlier. And like it or not, and I don't particularly care for it, because the cattle right at the moment we're using are too little.
Yeah,
I think the cattle.
If Neil was still roping, he'd jerk their skin probably right off their bodies. The ones they're roping now.
That one big gray horse I had, he might have. But he was an exception. He was an exception.
Did your grandpa ever talk about the old turtle days, or when they set that up, or anything?
The reason they struck in Boston is because the Cowboys were paying an entry fee. And there was added money. Okay, all the Cowboys was getting was whatever the added money. The stock contractor was keeping all the entry fee. So the Cowboys struck to be able to get the entry fees added to the added money so the pot would be bigger. So they formed the Cowboys Turtle Association. The reason of the Turtle Association, to go slow to get it right. Mm-hmm. So that way it would be for the cowboy, not for everybody, for the contractor or whatever. The cowboy ruled his own progress, his own added money, his own rules of competing. The spur ride, or the time, the size of the cattle, etc. And then later on, that's when they formed the RCA, and then years after that, they formed the PRCA.
That's quite the deal for them guys putting on the rodeo.
Well, yeah, they had a good deal going.
They just set up how much the purse was they were going to pay out, and then made the Cowboys pay a bunch of entry fee.
Yeah,
kept all that, probably added up more than the purse Actually.
Yeah, I know it. I knew Everett was right in the middle of all that, you know.
He was the original signee for the petition to strike. He was the original signee on the Cowboys Turtle Association. Because I got a copy of the two documents.
Yeah, I've seen
Mom's got a copy of the two documents. And I imagine you got a copy of the two documents from your granddad.
Yeah,
And when they had formed the RCA, Papaw could have had card number 1. He said, no, give that to somebody else. He took card number 7. And there was 50 years age difference between the two of us. And I entered a team roping with him at Ada, Oklahoma one year. And my sister said, let me enter it. And so Sis gave him my card number. Enter with card number 7. The gals at Procom said, anything else? No, card 7. Just 7. Just 7. And it was basically right at 50 years age difference and about 50 years difference in the deal.
Cody, one time, I used to love to fish, and had a creek right north of the house, and I had a trot line stretched up for there. I was making a new trot line. I had to stretch from one tree to the other, about head high, and I was tying my hooks off on it. You know, every 3 or 4 feet, you'd tie a drop, you know. And I had it stretched up there across there and just left it until I was going to take it to the creek. Well, Everett Shaw was staying with us, and it was the Ben Johnson weekend, and he was roping the team roping. He was up in year. He quit steer tripping, but he was roping that Friday night team roping. And, you know, it didn't get done until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And he brought his horse home late at night, put him up, and then we're walking back to the house, went through that gate on the north side of the house and walked right into that trot line. So I'm the only guy that ever caught Everett Shaw on the trot line. He gave me a hard time about it next morning. He good-natured, but it's pretty funny. He was quite a guy, really a nice guy.
What about your grandma, Neil? She seemed like quite the woman.
She was. And later in life, there's a lot of times I'd go by. I didn't have nobody to go with. And I'd call her up and I said, you want to go to roping? Sure. I'll be there in 4 hours. She had her bag packed, sitting by the back door, and she'd have me supper made. Sitting on the table. And she didn't ask me where we was going. She just asked, 1 day, 2 days? So she know how much to pack. Take off. And one time we went to Bandera, to Happy, back to Seguin. No, Happy to Roswell, to Seguin, to home. Jim Davis said, ask her, can he find you a better trip, a little shorter trip? And she said, why? You can die at home. I want to go. I want to live. She's ready to go. She's ready to go every time. All I had to do is just load her up. Go by and load her up. Just call her up and say, you ready to go? We'd go. I took her 4 or 5 years in the fall with me.
She was a real special lady, too, for sure.
You got a picture of her, Jimbo. No, that's the
mom.
other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind. That's his mom.
Yeah. But I showed it to Neil there a while ago.
Well, that's a cool picture. Mm-hmm. It's of Neil's mom, Barry Burke,
My dad.
Jimbo's dad, and Jimbo's uncle, all at Madison Square Garden at the rodeo.
Yeah, it was in the New York City newspaper in 1946.
That's too neat. She really seemed like a true friend of the Cowboys too. All the Cowboys. Was there always a lot of Cowboys hanging out over there with your granddad and her?
Yes. There always was. You know.
Now, they lived in town, didn't they? Wasn't their house in
The barn, the horse barn, was now as part of the school parking lot, was right there next to the school. You walk through the horse barn out through that one pen, across out the back fence and into the school parking lot. Mom just walked down along by the barn to school. That's where Mom grew up. Mom's living right now is where she grew up.
Right.
And Papa, he always took an old swing, took most of had left part of the swing, had a welder modify, make a basketball goal out there and had the ground packed down there so all the kids come by and play basketball. I always had that right there for the kids. For the kids to play basketball. I always kept track of the kids around there. Babe would go up there and still to this day, she's got her own parking spot in the gymnasium, she's got her own seat right there at mid-court. Nell Shaw, reserved for Nell Shaw. Yeah. When she passed away, the boys and girl high school basketball team line procession.
Everett was a big basketball fan too, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Last time I saw him was at a area basketball tournament in Ada. We were down there scouting for Pawhuska was getting ready to play Millwood, possibly going to play Millwood. Millwood was playing, and he was down there watching the game. You know, that had been like 78 or something, 77, 78.
Was he? Did he help with that big rodeo they used to have in Ada? Boy, I've heard that was a big dude in its day.
Yeah, I don't know what he exactly helped with. Ken Lance was a heck of a promoter. He would come and rope with Papaw. Ken team roped a lot. And so, you know, Papaw would go up there and rope with him when Papaw was stripping steers. And he had Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, all them guys before they got big. He had a lot of the big names. He had Reba, Susie, Pake, before they all got big.
That Ken Lance one time, I heard a story at his rodeo there in Ada. I guess he had a big bar and a rodeo grounds all kind of right there together. And they wheeled out a wheelbarrow load of nickels into the middle of the arena. And they had all these girls picked out. However many nickels you can get on your body, you can keep. So I guess this one old girl, she loaded her whole top up with nickels. And when she stood up, the whole thing just came down in front of the whole crowd.
Served her right for cheating like that.
But I thought there was a rodeo maybe even predating Ken Lance's there. Was he the one that was putting on the one that your grandpa won?
I don't know. It was there in the 40s and 50s, you know. And Everett was arena director, I know, in 53 or 4, because I read it in an old article I've got. And he was talking about the roping steers were Florida crosses, and they averaged 786 pounds.
Yeah. I remember some stories, not that I could describe, but he's talking about them Florida steers, and they was real waspy and real wild.
Yeah. They'd get up and be hooking your horse and stuff,
yes,
trying to bellering. That's what Jim said.
We got a picture of those first steers from the first Ben Johnson roping right here, and there's those Florida steers.
Yeah.
And they look like a pen of bucking bulls turned out
they
there.
They just stand back and look at the camera with their ears out here like that, you know, like, you're not going to pin me.
They do look pretty wild. That one big old Bramer right in the front, he looks...
Right. Neil, if you were making a Mount Rushmore of steer ropers, who would you put on it? Need 4 names.
Everett Shaw, Sonny Davis, Joe Webster, Clark McIntyre.
That's a true Mount Rushmore steer ropers right there.
For sure.
Hey, where'd you go to college at, Neil?
Kansas State University.
Was there any other famous rodeo guys on your rodeo team that you went with, or were you the biggest one to come out of there?
Well, I ain't gonna say I'm the biggest one. I'm one of them.
Yes, sir.
But there's later on Tanner Bruner come out. He graduated I believe he graduated out of Kansas State. Now he's competing in the Bulldog and the NFR. Jimmy Crothers, I don't know whether he finished. Whether he went to K-State or not. First Frontier Rodeo.
We were talking about Jimmy Carruthers just the other day with old Justin McKee.
Yep.
I grew up around Jimmy Carruthers, man. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Puts on good rodeos, too. Who was when you started rodeoing, who was some of your guys you rodeoed with, went up and down the road with, Neil?
when I first started rodeoing, I was roping calves and bulldogging, and I didn't have anybody. Everybody's either roping calves or bulldogging. So I was just by myself because I was drawing up at a 4-performance rodeo. I was drawing up first and last, or in the middle, or all 4 performances. So I couldn't go with nobody. And then when I got to tripping steers only, I traveled with Rod Hartness in a little while, and then I got to traveling with your dad. And that's where I stayed, traveling with your dad. And either that or by myself.
What about when you won Pendleton, Neil? What was it like? What do you remember? Because you've told me about it a few times.
I left here. My horse was sore. I broke a lot of saddle trees on him that particular year. And he's sore, and I knew he couldn't go to Pendleton. Harold Baumgardner and Guy Allen, Harold was wanting me to go out there because they had 2 different rigs out there, and Harold was needing another driver, basically. And Harold said, I got a horse leased out there that fit you, really would fit you. I said, Harold, the only way I'll go out there if you'll let me ride your own horse. Because I rode his own horse the year before because mine was sick. I was at Walla Walla at the vet clinic, and I rode his at KC. And water was standing in the arena, and I come back in a performance, and I was the only guy to rope during the performance to get a check. I got a third in a second round on his horse, and so I knew I could place on that horse. And he finally said, all right, yeah, if you don't get along with Walla Walla and Allisburg, you can ride my horse, Pendleton. I said, okay. So I went out there with him. They come by and picked me up from Veneta, went up there, and we stopped at Sean Madden's place at Torrington. I rode the black horse, and that was the horse he had leased off Bud Alderson. And the horse, it would catch a fast, hard-running steer or a slow steer in the same spot. I was having problems figuring this out. I tied a steer 2 down on him at Sean's, and it seemed like he'd run. When he left out of the hole, left for the trip, he'd run harder out of there than he did 2-1. Well, this will work. Didn't get along very good at Walla Walla or Allisburg. So Harold, Guy, Lionel Burns all flew back to McAllister. And I think Phil Line was with them. And they flew back to McAllister to run their second one. So I was with Pacheco, Harold's hired man. We drove back across there to Bill Spratt's place. And we'd already gone to Casper, left Lionel's pickup in there to get worked on because it wasn't running very good. We come back out to Bill Spratt's, we roped. So I roped on this black horse, and I went to trying to figure out some things. And I figured out how to get him. Most tripping horses, you want them kind of like a kid pony, kind of laid back, rode down, so they're rate. Well, this horse had so much rate, I had to pick him up, get him on his tiptoes, kind of like a calf horse or a bulldogging horse, so I could get the run out of there. And then I logged him up there, and I was building a little more speed out of him in the logs. He knew the length of the rope. You didn't have to worry about walling a rope. You just stepped off and You just went to the steer because he knew the length of the rope. Only time he might drive by you, the horns was hanging in the dirt and rope was popping him on the rear. So there, Pendleton, I would be reached back and just tapping his rear, waking him up. Boy, he'd be bouncing up here and everybody's thinking I was crazy. I would back in there and he'd jump and catch him again. The first steer I had at Pendleton was a steer I had at Walla Walla. No, at Ellensburg. And he tried to get up, tied him down. I right behind Phil. And that summer I'd gone from Pecos to Phil's place and roped with Phil a little bit. And I knew Phil could run up there and take one swing over his back, over his steer's back, and rope one. But he took one or two or three or four swings over his back. He missed every one of them. I've seen his practice been every day. I mean,
You wouldn't have thought that.
no, I didn't, but I knew that. And Phil like went a second, I went a third, or Phil went a third, or I went a fourth. I was right behind him in both rounds. And come the short round, I drew a decent steer, and he faded off the left, and I roped him, stuck it, went left, and it was 11-7. I said, I was a relief. I got me some money. I'm going home with some money. And got my trip paid for. And I thought, I'm just plumb happy right there. I was plumb happy with second. Earlier in the week, Lionel Burns, everybody's wondering how, asked Kurt Robinson how where they stand in the deals. Kurt looked at me and he asked me, he said, you want to know where you at? And I said, heck no. I'm up here to have some fun. I'm just up here to enjoy myself and rope steers. So after I roped that short round steer, I said, I got money. No worse than second. I'm in great shape. I watched Phil come off there. And Phil runs up there and races the horse up and takes one swing over his back. And I said, rope, Phil, rope, Phil. Oh, hell, Phil. He hadn't even throw his rope, and I knew he was going. Sure enough. That's something Don McLaughlin taught me. One year at Cheyenne, he took me out there and he said, come out here and sit with me. And just told me about looking at a person here and what this person's going to do, what that person's going to do. Being able how to read it. And then that's where that helped me later on how to read things. It's like me traveling with your dad. Even though we swung a rope different, we threw at different length or spoke or different size loops. He knew how I roped, I knew how he roped. It was each of us to help keep us in line so we could keep drawing checks so we keep going. And I knew then they come up there and said this, and I was still a little shocked. I won Pendleton.
What do they do after you win it?
Oh, they take you over there in front of the main grandstand, and they bring out, I want a set of horns, and they're a 36-inch tip-to-tip spread. And I'd still go out there and try to rope them every once in a while. And watch, a blanket, pair of boots, a hat. And nowadays they add Pendleton whiskey to it. Back then they didn't add Pendleton whiskey to it.
I wouldn't know anything about any of that stuff. I've had it, but I don't remember it, Jimbo. It's one of them deals. One of them deals.
I don't know either.
I've made memories. Lots of memories for other people that I just don't remember, especially at Pendleton. That can happen to you up there.
Pendleton's one place you can have way too much fun before dark, lay down, take a nap, wake up half hour after dark, and start again.
Yeah, I thought it was about midnight when I walked out of that letterbuck room. Is noon. It was like noon, Jimbo. I'd tell you the rest of it, but I don't remember.
No, don't tell us.
Do you remember anything about your great uncle Dick? Dick Truitt, the great Dick Truitt.
Some
Jimbo, he did a trivia question on the other day.
Yeah, about him bulldogging that buffalo.
Sun City, Kansas.
Yeah.
Got the picture of it. He first did it off running board. You remember the old pickups had a running board on the side, and first did it off a pickup. He said, "Heck, I can do it horseback." So he come back and did it horseback. And there's another little old trivia deal that, years ago, the cowboys, or one cowboy or two cowboys, would take the horses from one rodeo to the next. They'd head and tail them, and two guys would just take their bedrolls and everything, go cross country to the next rodeo. Everybody else ride the train. That way they didn't have to pay as much fare for the horses. Uncle Dick come up on to one of them old B Westerns shooting a movie. And this director had a scene there where the outlaw or whatever jumped his horse off this cliff down in the water. And Uncle Dick looked, he said, "What's going on?" He's shooting this movie. And he said, "We need somebody. Their stunt people wouldn't do it." Uncle Dick looked there, "What are you doing?" He said, "We need somebody to ride this horse off this cliff." Looked off down there in the water. He said, "What's it pay?" He said, $100. That was a lot of money back there in the 20s, 30s.
He did that buffalo for 10.
He said, "I'll do it." So here comes Uncle Dick. He just rides off there. When the horse jumps off there, he just leaves him. First time. Into the water. Comes out there. He goes along there. Comes back up there to the director, and he said, "That good enough? You want to do it again?" "Oh, I kind of like to do it again." "Oh, okay, I'll do it again." This time he stays on the horse all the way to the water. Got $200 off down. Dick thought he was rich there.
Yeah.
There's a book coming out about Ike Rude, and Jimbo was lucky enough to be one of the guys that got to read it first before it even comes out. And there's a picture in there. Tell us about that picture, Jimbo.
It was at Chicago during the World's Fair, I think 33 or 34, and their attendance was kind of down. They wanted to do something to kind of boost attendance, so they had a horse swim. And they took these cowboys and their horses out in the middle of Lake Michigan, not in the middle, but out there a ways, and jumped them off there and going to swim them back to the bank. And Dick, and in this picture, it's a picture of Dick Truitt and Ike Rude jumping their horses off this barge. And they said Ike Rude won it. But there were several other cowboys in the back waiting to jump off. But you could tell it was Dick Truitt. It wasn't, he's unmistakable, and Ike too, it wasn't no doubt who they were. And but that's quite a picture. They said Ike won it because he'd swum his horses enough on his ranches down in Texas, and he'd just slide off the saddle and hold on the tail, and he'd splash water in their eye to make them go whichever direction he wanted them to go, and he won it. But Dick could try anything. One time at Ada, my dad told me this story. He was riding my grandpa's horse over a rock, and there's two loops, and he missed him the first loop, and the bridle broke. And most guys would grab hold,
Yeah.
And he went on around the ring, roped him again, and tied that steer with a rope bridle. Didn't bother him.
Dick had a black stud. I remember it as a stud, but I'm thinking it's a black stud. Rope calves on a bulldog. Heck of a bulldogging horse. And down there at the old roping pens, which they call the slaughter pens, which years and years ago, Dick and his brother would butcher beef out there for the local meat market in Stonewall. And But Dick was bulldogging. A lot of times he'd be bulldogging. Didn't have any horn cattle, so he'd bulldog his Brimer calves. Papa would haze for him. Dick would just crawl off, and he wouldn't knock them 300-pound Brimer calves down. He just grab a hold of them by their ears, bring them around and throw them. That's the only practice he had. That's what he practiced on.
Holy moly.
I believe those guys were turned a little different than these guys today.
I think so. You know, they still got a pro rodeo and close to his hometown. I think. Do you help out with it, Neil? The old Fredonia Rodeo still?
I still help out with it.
Your family ain't even done with rodeo yet. Your wife, she's jumped up, taking the torch for the family. Keep y'all in the rodeo business, hadn't she?
Well, she's started off. She's trying to do that. A friend of ours got her started. Needed some help. Now, she wants to try to get time enough rodeo so she can time the steer open finals one time.
That shouldn't be a problem.
It seems to be. But
well, if it was JP Wickett in the way, he's not going to be the director anymore. He's moving on, so which I don't think it was, but it might have been. Who knows? Who knows about all that? But yeah, is she the only PRCA card holder in the family now?
No. I got my gold card.
Oh, okay.
I got my gold card. No.
Do you keep your insurance and everything paid every year?
Nope.
Oh, so she's the only active member.
She's only active member. but all I have to do is send my insurance, money for my insurance, and I'm active.
Yes, sir.
Which I want to do. I want to go back. I want to go. There's a few of them rodeos up there that like Belfouche and some of the Montana Trippins and Dakotas. Some of them old pens up through there that years ago that didn't have when I was going. I'd like to go rope out one time.
That Belfouche is really cool. It's still like, I'm going to assume it's still like the stands and the rodeo grounds is right when they first started having rodeos there, because it's just, you can just feel the history there when you're at a place like that, Jimbo.
It's kind of like going to Deadwood, even though the rope and shoots at the time the event in is all metal and everything else, but the old wooden buck and shoots and everything else still give you the old nostalgia of the old school.
I've got a picture in 1935. My grandpa went in second at the calf roping up there with four guys, the four average winners, and it said 1935 Belfouche.
Well, that's really something up there.
Yeah.
Deadwood, I went there a few times. I had to write a hot check to the rodeo secretary because I lost all my money at the casino to get enough gas to get to Burwell to the rodeo the next day, Jimbo.
Well, you got to do what you got to do.
And she was like, I don't know why all these cowboys are writing checks for cash here at Deadwood. I'm thinking, well, because they cleaned our clock over at the casino. That's why. Well, I tell you what, Neil, that was when you gave your Mount Rushmore of ropers, I think that was probably one of the most legitimate Mount Rushmores of steer ropers I've ever heard.
Sure was.
They're all true Mount Rushmore guys. And
all of them was guys that helped me somewhere.
And you had some major help. Holy moly. Shoat helped them out when they were younger. And then Shaw, his dad, his Uncle Dick, stayed with Phil Line. Holy moly.
It's
the best of the best. You've been rubbing elbows with your whole life. You're part of the family.
the little things I learned, I picked up from people. And just listen. You learn a lot just keeping your mouth shut and listening. And learning things like little things, like stepping down, having one bit in my tripping horse's mouth, and Clark said, step down, put a little bit lighter bit, and let him run into it a little bit. roping with Clark Pake over at their place when I was a kid. Roping down there at Schultz. It's something I don't, treasure. A lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge that, there's a lot of knowledge I'd like to pass on. But a lot of guys don't seem to think I know it.
Out of all your travels, rodeoing up and down the road, where was your favorite place to stop and eat, Neil?
County
I
line.
went out and ate with them a lot of times.
County line.
The County Line Barbecue Restaurant, Oklahoma City. I think it's shut down now, Neil. How could a place like that shut down?
All I know is I had to drive more times than not out of it, away from there. The rest of the crew was with me. All had to sleep.
They had too many beers and ribs, I guess.
Well, they was too full, and they all like big bears.
Hey, one time,
Sleep.
one time we were all going to go out and eat, like in Pecos or something one night, and about an hour before we went and eat, Neil went to go get him a snack. Foot-long Subway sandwich with so much stuff on it, he couldn't even fold it over. That's how much stuff he had on it.
Damn.
That was a little old snack for Neil.
I was hungry.
Yeah, growing boy.
Well, I ate all day.
Right.
He had a beer. I didn't have a beer. I was short on carbs.
What you got going with Cole? What's Colby doing nowadays, your son?
Buying cattle for me, taking care of my cattle. Day working for a couple of other ranches, taking care of his and his wife's cattle.
Y'all got him roping or anything yet, Neil?
I've got him roping, but he's sure having a heck of a time being consistent roping horns.
Well, it looks real easy sometimes. It's a very humbling sport sometimes. Well,
He's has some problems. I got one steer I bought. And the first time I run him, had him running. I said, I'll bet you a soda right now you're going to miss him. His banana horns.
ooh, yeah.
I was down there and he drooped down there. And I said, you'll miss him. Because you'll change your plane of your loop. And it's that same loop, but you'll change it. You'll run up there and you'll change it. Sure enough, he changed it. I said, all right, now, same bet. I jumped out there and roped him, slicker and whistle. But come 90, I had one like that, and that was my nemesis. I had 5 steers, and I had one like that. I could not rope him. Every time I go up there and took one swing over his back, I did not rope him. So I had to quit roping him so I wouldn't keep fighting my head.
Woo-wee. Yeah, I had a steer like that. I kept drawing him all year long, everywhere I went. And pretty soon, I didn't even get to where I'd even catch the booger, Jimbo.
He just followed you around. You knew you was going to draw him when
This
you
big blue roan booger, number
Yep.
16. I hated him. And I was the one hauling him around.
Yeah, that's bad. You should have
I
left
coulda
him at
took
the
him right
house.
off the herd.
Why did you leave him at the house?
I get what I deserve for bringing him,
Yep.
I guess, Jimbo. Well, Jimbo, you got anything else for Neil?
Oh, just thank him for coming and sharing some of those great stories. You know, like I say, Everett Shaw, that's just, you don't get much better than Everett Shaw when you talk about rodeo.
I think a lot of people's going to appreciate it because Neil, he was a known guy in rodeo.
Right.
Everybody looked up to watch old Neil. What about you chewing tobacco? You still chewing tobacco, Neil?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
Are you still buying it from the same place? Getting it the same way?
I still one nasty habit I haven't given up.
All right, let's tell everyone where you get it and how much you get at a time.
I get a Tennessee Chew, Fred Stoker's and Sons Tennessee Chew, and it comes in 1 pound packages.
I thought it came in a 25-pound box.
Now I get it in the 1 pound packages anymore.
Oh, okay.
You cut back a little bit.
I cut back a little bit. The 25-pound bags used to be real good, but nowadays I can't get it that way. They can't ship it that way over through the mail.
He used to have his own Ziploc bag, Jimbo. The same one, I think, for years. It was green. It done turned green, the whole bag, but he kept that box of chew.
He come back natural because I remember his dad always like Everett Shaw.
Yeah.
And what are you doing now, Neil? A little trucking, I hear?
Driving a truck, pulling a pneumatic trailer, hauling powdered cement to the companies that'll mix it. And that's what I'm doing right now.
All right. You ain't got enough of that road yet. You're still beating the highway down, just like you're rodeoing.
I'm still beating the highway down. But comes the weekends, it takes a little longer to recover.
Well, I'm ready to get for him to get that horse going and enter them rodeos up north. I'm ready to watch Neil Worrell run a couple again.
Yep.
It would be fun to watch. It'd be fun to see. It'd be fun to do.
The old whirly bird at it again. All right. Neil, we appreciate you coming in today and sharing your story and your grandpa's and your dad's and everybody's. It was just a great day.
Thank you for having me.
You got anything else you want to tell anyone before we go?
God bless everybody.
Thanks,
Well, all
Neil.
right. Everybody, this has been another great one. Be sure and like and share. Leave us a comment. It means a lot to me and Jimbo and everybody else. And we'll see y'all next week.
Later.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.